Welcome back, WW Fly Corvair. Here's a thought for the day, or an observation anyway. A funny thing I noticed, we recently went to a small aviation event, and up comes the question of electric aircraft for experimental aviation. And of course it doesn't take 2 seconds for somebody to start saying, I heard that so-and-so is getting a Tesla, and all of this talk about electric this and green that. And I think that's all great, but I was listening to this, and it didn't take 5 minutes for somebody to say, well, I was looking at gasoline engines, but I decided to wait and see what's going to be up with electric engines, because I read some press releases and they said they'll be flying this year, and there's an early investment opportunity for early adopters. Now, right there is the hallmark of a unicorn salesman who's gotten in touch with this guy. First of all, the guy who was saying it, I would estimate is 70 years old. He has no business, if he's serious about flying an experimental aircraft that he built with his own hands, he has no business looking at any technology that has not already been well proven and used for years. The reason why is that these stories about new technology coming out, they never quite come true. They do, but they won't be here in that guy's useful time of flying. So, anytime you hear a guy who's got hair as gray as mine and he says something like, I'm going to wait for this new idea to come out because I read about it on this website or a blog or some other story, that guy is having his dreams stolen from him by some BS artist. Now, this is nothing new in aviation. It's going to be, in the coming years, there'll be more and more talk about electric vehicles. Recently, had a neighbor who got a Tesla, and he said, there's 0 emissions on this vehicle. If you believe that, you're a nut. Electricity in our county in Florida here is made at a big old dirty, filthy, coal-burning power plant that's about 20 miles down the road. That's right, his Tesla is a coal-fired transportation device, just like a steam engine. And we all remember how clean they were. You can see lots of old videos of them puffing away. And essentially, it's hardly better with a Tesla as long as it's wired up to a coal-fired powered plant. So let's just forget about all that stuff and look at all that talk of e-flight and this and different universities and stuff. I went to the world's finest aviation university, Embry-Riddle, and I remember way back when we had student initiatives and people said the students are going to change the world. We did. It just took about 25 years to learn something about how industry works. So when you see a story about the University of so-and-so kids who are going to put together an e-flight thing, let's just roll back the clock 10 years. Before this, it was, fuel cells, and fuel cells were going to be the hydrogen fuel cells. They were going to power all the airplanes in the future. And there were people who waited for those things and they never showed up. I remember going to a seminar and the one guy who spoke after everybody else said, hydrogen has a molecular weight of 1, and it is a very small molecule, and there's a problem with porosity in tanks. And we looked at it and said, hey, that's really very true. So there were people 10 years ago who were waiting for fuel cells. You know what it was 10 years before that? Was the giant diesel rage. So the giant diesel rage came, and every experimental aircraft was going to have diesel engines on them. There were the Thielert diesels that were coming out of Germany that were put on Diamond aircraft. They all got ripped off, and they were replaced by 360 Lycomings. One of the things people found out is that people in cabins of light aircraft subjected to turbulence who smell diesel fuel, they barf a lot. But one of the things, when people weren't that interested in diesel engines, and of course there was diesel engine company after diesel engine company that had investment opportunities for people, not even having working prototypes. There were people who brought this stuff out for years and years. The one thing, when people didn't spend enough money investing in their companies, they all said the same thing. And this goes back to 1995. You can read every story about it where the guys said, oh, they're not going to make 100 low lead anymore. I was just down at our airport that sells fuel 10 miles south of here, and guess what? They're tank farms of 100 low lead. You can go back and search the database for stories from guys who vigorously predicted that there wasn't going to be a drop of 100 low lead fuel ever produced in this world after the year 2000. Yet it's still here. Everybody who responded was afraid that 100 low lead wasn't going to exist anymore. Clearly that wasn't true. We should look up every BS artist who tried to sell that stuff. But the reason why they were telling people that was to get people to get off the rails. And being on the rails is following known technology to get your airplane done. Anybody who wants to tell you that there's something just around the corner that's going to revolutionize flight and it's worth waiting for, if you got gray hair, it ain't worth waiting for. Let me say that again. If you have gray hair, don't wait for anybody. And if you're about 35, I got news for you. Don't wait for anybody. I can remember being 35 and it was the blink of an eye ago. So make sure that you have all your adventures that you deserve to have in aviation. And the easy route to them is by using known technology. When somebody comes out and says, it's new and exciting, it's electric flight, you can say, William Wynn told me that this ain't happening anytime soon. And you know what? I'm going to be right. The only question is, are you going to be out flying your airplane or listening to stories about how there's no 100 low lead left, or predictions of fuel cell powered airplanes, or diesel engines that never showed up at Oshkosh? So forget all that stuff. Stick with known technology that works. Make sure that your dreams happen. If you were smart enough not to invest in 1970s Moeller Sky cars in Popular Mechanics and every other story that came along about revolutionary products in the future, be smart now. Do not derail your plans to favor somebody else's daydream. That's never going to happen. There are only two kinds of ideas in aviation. They're unicorns and they're ponies. Unicorns are great because they smell like roses, and when they fart they let out a whole stream of butterflies, and you can go look one up underneath the rainbow. That's great. Ponies are workhorses. They do their work, and that's what Corvair motors are. Now, unicorns are better than ponies in every way, shape, and form, and we all know this. Except for one small detail about unicorns. They don't exist. So, when you see somebody trying to sell you on an electric airplane that's going to be at Oshkosh this year and you'll be able to take it for a flight, you can just rack this one up just the same as with all the myths that came that were going to change aviation along the way that never happened. Do not listen to people. I got a whole slew of them that people have always said, and I've had people come up to me year after year saying, oh, I'm just going to wait another year. I've been around long enough that I can recall those guys coming by and saying, oh, I had some health issues this year, I don't know if I'll be building, and so on and so forth. And they gave away all their dreams and plans in aviation. They threw them away to some BS salesman who was talking about some technology that was never going to happen. So keep that in mind. Go back to the workshop and build, and we'll see you out on the flight line. You deserve it. Thanks very much. WW Fly Corvair.